meeting. We'll start on the agenda. Apologies and reasons for absence.
Councillor Brown has a previous engagement.
Okay, that's our Vice Chairman.
And I haven't heard from Borough Councillor.
Yeah, okay. We're happy with our Vice Chairman being away?
Yeah.
Yeah, reason accepted. Good. Does anybody have any interests, pecuniary or other than pecuniary, in accordance with the Code of Conduct, etc., etc.?
No.
Nobody?
No.
No, good. So there's no need to have any dispensations. And a reminder to everybody that the meeting is being recorded with the big silver microphone, and if the technology works, which it usually does, it will go on YouTube on the council's account so that people who are not here can listen to it afterwards. So remember that it is being recorded. We'll now open the meeting for the public session. We'll adjourn the meeting and open the public session so that the public members here can make any points they want to, ask questions, comment on matters on the agenda. When I've closed the public session later, just a reminder that you're all welcome to stay. The meeting takes place in public except a little piece at the end. You're all welcome to stay, but you don't need to. It's up to you. And we will take planning items immediately after the public session for those who don't want to stay very long. So, who would like to talk from the members of the public? We usually do the planning applications first. So the first one on the agenda is land behind 1617 Lloyd's Green, and the application for a 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom house on the little piece of land that got sold by Ashford and has already had various other applications made on it. I'll open it for you to comment in a moment. The council will consider its own response later when we get back into the council meeting. And councillors will give their opinions and then we will decide what we think. Just bear in mind that because we've been through this about 2 or 3 times already, that the council has, it can always change its mind, but it has established various points already, and we'll probably draw on some of that if councillors are of a similar mind when we have taken our decision. But that will be when we get back into our meeting. Okay, who'd like to talk on that application?
Yeah, all of us.
Who goes first?
Yeah. Well, sort of, I don't know, curious about the, I've sort of looked at the plans, but I couldn't see anything on the access. I know where they're trying to decide access is going to be, but I'm curious about how they're going to finish it, what sort of substrate they're putting down. I don't know if this is the place to ask this question, but obviously it's planned for 5 cars, I think. Is that right, according to planning?
Spaces.
Yeah, that's right. So that's possibly 20 cars a day up and down at the moment what is a grass track. So I was just sort of curious as our garden backs onto it what the plan is, because I couldn't see anything in the plan about how they were going to sort of make the track, finish the track or anything like that really.
Okay, I think that you touch on a very important point. Worth just stressing, in case it's uncertain for anybody, this council here is asked by Ashford Borough Council to give its opinion on a planning application,
Right.
and we will give our opinion after we've decided what it is, support, object, any particular points we want to make, but we don't actually agree the thing. It has to be decided or refuse it. It has to be decided yes or no in Ashford. And those planning staff, the professional town planners, are the ones who have the opportunity of consulting the applicant. I don't think the applicant is here tonight, so we can't ask the question as to exactly what will be done or not be done, and later on put down whatever conditions they want if the thing was to be approved.
Okay.
The other point that's in the background of all of this, because we have made inquiries, and the clerk here does make inquiries with Ashford in some cases, Ashford have confirmed that they still own the track.
Right.
Whereas the applicant always appears to be giving the impression that they think it's theirs.
Yeah, we definitely.
And we will, all being well, subject to councillors, make that point yet again, which we have already. and that then leads into the point rather where you are.
I see.
We won't have the answer,
Understood.
but we can say that the Ashford end ought to be focusing on that among several other points. Other thing which the clerk wants me to say, because it's her specialist subject, is that it is a public right of way, which is a legal designation, comes under Kent County Council as the PROW authority, registration authority, and they have to be satisfied with anything that's done to the PROW. They're not against it being improved, but they have to be, I think, satisfied, agree, whatever. And there is also an anxiety on my side, at least, I don't know about other councillors, and I think some of you have mentioned it in the written documents, which we have had and we've read, about the width of that track for getting heavy vehicles up to the site to do the building work. That also applies to the one behind in the field that's owned by Mr. Carpenter, is it?
Yes.
Yes.
Where he's got permission already to build a house there, and obviously similar issues apply, except that lorries come in different sizes. I don't know. Please go on.
As you've said, Mr. Carpenter has permission. One of his conditions is to make that track suitable for vehicles to go up and down. At the moment he's waiting for the top where all the wood and the trees are there. Those have got to be cleared first.
Right.
And he then has to agree with Ashford and with KCC, because it's a public right of way, that he is going to produce what they need. So obviously he already has permission. So that is already in hand.
Okay.
So these people that are saying they will do, it's already in hand. Mr. Carpenter, before he can build his house, which he has permission for, he has got to provide a proper track.
Right, I see. Right.
So that issue in a way has already been addressed by a previous application.
But there's plenty of cracks for these things to fall between as well. You know, don't assume ever that these things will all work out as you hope. Whatever we say.
Yeah, fair enough.
Does anyone else want to raise points on this application?
To be fair, I think, obviously I spoke about this on the previous application. I think pretty much all of what I said before is still valid for this particular application as well as the application you put in before.
Where do you live? What's your address?
Mine's 17 Lloyds Green, so literally I'm right next to where they want to build.
Yeah.
So the house is literally going to be
You're backing onto it, aren't you?
backing onto it, right onto it.
So you sort of back onto the pumping station, and then this will be the other side of the pumping station, kind of. You hit one side as well.
Yeah. So I think, like I say, all my points that I've said before, I don't think that changes from this one to the last one. It's still all the same difference.
It is important for people as well as to raise it here, but to raise it formally with Ashford on the planning portal as well.
Yeah, I've started to write something that I put together from the previous one.
Yes, Mr. Lockhurst did before. A couple of things on the bond.
Yeah.
That is very important for all of you, because the sheer weight of numbers does help a bit at least. Obviously the parish council will expect to put in some kind of note on it, which the clerk will produce, but the more residents also put in the points they want. The key thing is, don't think that just because you've told us that's fine.
Yeah.
Your response to Ashford, especially when you're a close neighbour, is of significance to their processes, and they have to look at them, they count them up, you know, and they should be taking note and considering the validity and the strength of the points you make in deciding then whether to approve it or not, or make conditions. Okay, anybody else want to talk about?
I'm actually his father. I don't actually come from the village. Can I just
Yeah,
ask
please do. You don't have
one
to be a
point I always
resident.
wondered about? As far as the track goes, if Ashford Borough Council own the track,
That's what they tell
are
us.
they responsible for the safety on the track? If there's someone hurt there or an accident, or because if there's a car coming out and a car coming in and one backs out, there's a hedge right on the edge of the path, so the car backing out would actually back out on the road. They wouldn't be able to see up the road at all. So if there's an accident there,
I doubt that they would be found responsible, but I'm not a lawyer, and you can never tell what court cases do, or insurance companies for that matter.
Yeah.
The fact is that people go up narrow lanes all the time around here. They're highways, it's a slightly different situation legally.
Yeah, but you normally come to a place where you can pass, don't you? But there is literally,
I agree. I would not have thought it was an ideal thing to be seeking to do. But the fact is, Ashford sold that land. The fact that somebody bought it, and I believe paid considerably more than Ashford ever expected to get, so they've upped their hands. I think it was sort of put up to try and get a few thousand, and they got 45 or something. Someone thought they could build a house there. Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't expect I think really the thing with cars, vans, lorries or whatever is you're supposed to look out when you're driving and not bump into something.
Yeah.
General rule. But I agree with you, it could happen. Mick, you wanted to say something?
Well, I was going to wait till the end in case anybody else here wanted to say anything. But I think what you've been describing is a very good point. I own one of the houses down Lloyd's Green, if you're wondering who the hell I am. And also the point that you said about writing in to this application, couldn't you say do it again? Because what was said on last ones do not get repeated on the next ones. So you must do it all again, I'm afraid. That is a fact.
Yeah.
Just because you get planning permission to build something doesn't mean to say it can be built physically. And this is what I think is going to stymie this application, should it get through, is, as you rightly say, Ashford Borough Council, the Housing Department of Ashford Borough Council, own that strip, and KCC are the people who register it as a public right of way. So either of those organisations will say, no, you're not doing that. You can put a firm surface down there maybe, to make it easier for people to walk, or put a pushchair down. It's what's commonly known, and I'm sure you've all heard it before, as a ransom strip. You actually get your permission, but you can't build it because you can't access it. It has been happened before, and I mean usually it's a ransom strip because the person who owns the little bit of land in front of where you want to make your access wants some money to be paid so that you can use that access. But I don't think this will be the case here, because in order to build a good road down there, highway basically, down there to accommodate a truck such as one of my friends here drives, it'd never happen. Well, it happened once, but you never get out again.
That was going to be my point, because obviously if it's public right of access, there's a footpath that runs along the track. So what's the likelihood of landowners being slapped with a compulsory purchase in order to make the track wider? Because our back gardens back onto the track.
PLOW is not, as far as I know, in this instance for vehicles, of course.
No.
Except that Ashford did grant a way leave to Mr. Carpenter or his father to take a vehicle up to the
Agricultural
big field
vehicle.
agricultural purpose, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, these things, those things, there's plenty of trips and traps in there. But then again, although it stays a PROW for foot use,
Yes, from a
Ashford could
legal
always
point
sell
of
it.
view, they have to widen the track. If they get the go-ahead,
Yeah.
from a legal point of view, they have to widen it. So my
is that a
question would be,
question or
my question would be, where do we stand from a viewpoint of compulsory purchase of a section of back garden in order to widen the track? Because that is the
Well,
only way they can widen it.
You can only have it compulsorily purchased off you if there are, and here I have a rough understanding, don't quote me, it would have to be a body that had compulsory purchase powers or could get them from something like a public inquiry, and I think a minister has to counter-sign it, as it were. So I think, and it's very expensive and slow and difficult, and the law is a mess on it. So
So at the moment, it's
I see that as a bit difficult for a house on several grounds. That would be my personal
Yeah.
opinion.
good.
I don't think that's possible. The other concern I would have is that there are some trees along there that I think are rather in the way of a
Yeah.
wide vehicle.
It's actually in the way of the gardens as
So
well.
then you've got an issue about chopping trees. Now I don't expect any of them are TPO'd, no particular reason.
One is-
but-
One
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
One is.
The big oak is at the
Oh yes, but it's wider there. It's where you
Yeah,
get
but it's
into
got a
the
little
narrow-
branch.
Oh,
Yeah, the height of it.
Oh, that's
the,
true, yeah.
the likes of my lorry, for instance,
Yeah,
wouldn't,
that's true.
you wouldn't even
Okay.
dream of getting under
Yeah,
there.
that's true. But later on, of course, you get into a width problem.
Yeah.
And we've got like the telegraph pole that's out on there as well,
Yeah, that's right. Just down from the
Down.
just,
Okay.
just past the oak tree. So, yeah, that's where it goes quite small.
Okay, yeah. Indeed. Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else on that application?
Yeah.
No. Okay. Right. Can we then talk about the second application at Millhouse Stocks Road? I can just about see the owner there. Do you want to say anything to us on that, Miriam?
I can tell you that the actual planning application is closed. Ashford told us that we needed to put in for full planning permission. We didn't feel that was right, but I didn't have the energy to argue with them, so I gave them their £200 and trying to get on with it. But then they've just written to us and said, good news, you don't need planning application after all.
Did they send a cheque back?
Yes, we plan our money back. But, I mean, we obviously still do need the listed building consent, and we are in conversation with the conservation officer who's visited us to tweak the plans. Obviously, we want to do exactly what the conservation officer is advising us to do to protect the fabric of the building, without question. So it is being tweaked, but I think from the parish council's perspective, you're simply really now looking at the impact to the fabric of the building, which probably most of you wouldn't have too much about, as we don't. So we're just led by the conservation officer, which I expect the parish council would be led by too. So
Sure. And
there's
you'll have to
nothing
get
really
buildings
further,
regs, won't
further
you?
to. Sorry.
You have to get buildings regs, presumably, where you
Oh
have
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
pop
All
up
the,
the
all
corner of
the
the building.
building
and that,
regs and everything, but in terms of it comes under permitted development, the
Yeah, good.
structural works, and it's just really the effect on the fabric of the listed building that's being considered. But if you want to ask any questions, is there anything that you don't understand, I'm happy to answer the questions. But I'm personally leaving it to the conservation officer to sort it out with the architect.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Miriam. I did think that it was very nice, concise. It's, of course, as you say, not a planning application, but nice, concise application. I wouldn't say that I went into all the finer details of the building detail. As you say, there are other people to look at that with more professional background. Does anyone want to ask Miriam any questions on her application?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you then. Is there anything else that members of the public want to question, raise, suggest on any other issues on the agenda or for future agendas? No? Good.
Could I
Oh,
just
please
actually
do,
raise
Miriam,
one
yeah.
thing while I'm here? Can I just confirm who's actually responsible for cleaning the play park over at the village green? Well, it's not the village green, but you know where I mean. Is that the parish council or is it Ashford Borough Council who are actually cleaning it?
In what way?
Well, the play park, I
Yeah.
took my little grandson over there to go on the swings, and it's absolutely disgusting. You would really not put a child on the swings there.
No,
It's disgusting.
there's an ongoing problem there, but Alf does clean it as best he can.
So it's Al's responsibility
It's
as
what
opposed
we
to Ash.
it's what we do, yes. Unless
Yeah,
it's
well-
really major, and then if he can't do anything with it, because
So-
we've had trouble with the birds.
Yeah.
That's the
So
biggest
could the
problem.
parish council actually then get some professional person in to come and give it pressure wash or whatever it needs, because it is honestly disgusting. You would not put the child on those swings. I was really disappointed. I mean, I haven't used it in years, and I've never seen anything quite as bad as that was. maybe it was just a particularly bad time when I hadn't done the
I didn't say he has been away. He's been away.
It really does need a really thorough clean.
Right, I'll have a word. I'm seeing him tomorrow.
I can kind of second with the birds actually, because I take my daughter over there and they do mess on the swings quite often. They quite
Yeah.
often.
It is something that we've
Yeah.
even talked
There was
about
more
with
than just
Ashford.
bird mess on there. It was
Mm.
black mould and it'd been there for some time.
Okay, very much.
Thank you.
Check.
Well, look at that. The ideal from our point of view, which we've been trying to pursue without any success with Ashford, it just keeps getting put in a big pile and left, is to seek, I think this has all been since you've been here, Miriam, well I say since, I mean this goes back a couple of years now, to get Ashford to decide whether they're, just to decide in principle whether they're willing to have a discussion with us about transferring any or all of that land over there to us. Village Green is the most obvious part because they can't do anything with it anyway. It's not worth anything because it's registered Village Green. If they wanted to do any of the other bits, fine, but there's less, you know, they may feel, well, they still get £5 a year for putting a horse on it or whatever. If we did get the Village Green from them, then the opportunity is to say, okay, can we move the play area, the idea of the area of the play area over to the Village Green, because it is much more usable in the sense that it's nearer to where all the children are, and the more it's used, the more it's in effect kept up, because use also helps. It's also not under all the trees. The other thing is, on a matter of perhaps close to your heart, that if we got the Village Green, it opens up the opportunity to have another try at doing something about the pond, which is years ago now that we wanted to do that. And the project, I think, ran away a bit on costs, and then we never got the grant. But to be honest, if we got it, then I think that the parish council actually could apply enough resources with also local volunteer help, but you know, the parish council has money and could actually tidy that up greatly. But we'd want to have the responsibility and the control rather than it just stay with Ashford and deteriorate again.
So Ashford actually do nothing now then, do
No.
they, in terms of...
No.
Well, that's a bit of a cop-out for Ashford then,
Indeed.
really.
So that's what we're trying to do, but unfortunately, every so often I chase it up and it's just still sitting there waiting for anyone to take any interest in my request. And most recently the borough councillor's on it as well, trying to get a response. I mean, I went in at chief executive level and I've got nowhere. So sadly. Okay, so can I close the public session? Thank you. Right, okay, back to the council meeting then, and we'll confirm the minutes of the meeting of, you can stay here if you want to hear what we say later, but you don't have to. Okay, right, bye-bye then. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming. Take care.
Bye. Okay, the minutes of the meeting. I had a couple of tiny suggestions of changes which I didn't spot when I looked at it before. The Court Leap planning application, there's a typo after ridge in the last line, or last line but one. And I also suggested earlier to Yvonne that I think we should be changing the word expressing to mentioning, because expressing implies that it was our concern, whereas actually we were passing on the concern from another resident. So if people are happy with that, and then does anyone else have any anxieties on them? Any changes they'd like to make?
None other than
Can I sign them then?
Yes.
Good. Change those two bits, so I've got to initial that and initial that. Okay, that's all done. Right, this one. So matters arising, the first one is the bus shelter update. I'm conscious that Yvonne and I and Greg Penoyer have got to arrange meetings with the contractors that she's identified.
And I've found another one. Well,
Oh,
it's
four.
the fourth one. It's not another one. It's I've actually got hold of one that hadn't responded.
Right, okay,
That
good.
is interested. So.
But so we can do that. Can I leave that with you to chase up them and dates so that we can start trying to do it? Ideally, of course, I suppose, if we had a kind of half an hour with one and half an hour with another rather than going on 4 different days. A bit
Yes,
like
I need to find
try
dates
what
with
you
you and
do.
Greg at the
Yeah, a
first.
bit like what the Ashford Grants panel does. Only they can wait in the outside there without having to stand in the rain. Right. The Swan ACV update. That's at a community value.
Well, all I've got is that we were waiting until we had a full council.
Indeed. And we have a few, that's right, we've got a full council now.
Well, one short of that. We had comments from last
Yes.
time.
What we had last time was that 2 councillors were missing, 2 different councillors were missing. And the position then, subject to the councillors that weren't here last time coming, which are here now, was that we would be guided by the community as to what people wanted to do. Excuse me. We'd be guided by the community in the sense it's not ultimately for the parish council to do much about it, but we can encourage, facilitate, help, guide, encourage, whatever, depending on what feelings we're getting from within the village. And the last time when the Save Our Swan or Save the Swan campaign got going and was very heavily supported, the pop-up pubs, fantastic work done by the committee, which was not directly concerning the parish council, except that Paul Venning was on it as an individual, but not actually as a parish councillor. There was a huge impetus behind that, and of course it all came to nothing when the pub was put up for auction just as COVID started, and before, therefore, the group who had done all the prep, they'd had it surveyed for buildings work, they'd had it surveyed for valuation, they'd raised some money, but they hadn't raised the main bulk, and they were just about to go to raise the main bulk after Christmas 2019, January, February 2020, when COVID came. And so they couldn't buy it because they hadn't raised the money, weren't going to be able to raise the money during COVID, and it was simply auctioned off to someone who had got the money in the bank, which is Kevin Gillespie. And that's where we are now. Now that time was when there was a lot of village support. I mean, it was palpable that there was a lot of village support, big meetings in the hall next door and all the rest of it. This time, I have not heard that, but some of you will have your own contacts. I've heard people saying, it's never going to work, and everyone's sort of everyone's the wrong word. The ones I've heard from are generally less positive that there is an answer. Now, I find that disappointing. I don't really understand why the pub can't work. But clearly it didn't work on the model that's been put forward so far by the existing owner. I have heard, but I have no idea if this is true, that he is also willing to rent it out, and that the rental being asked is, in the words of the person who told me, not by no means outrageous, not unreasonable. But that is still a different pitch for a tenant who is renting it to a pitch of one that, the tenant's always going to rent it, but it doesn't have the kind of same solidity as the community actually owning it and then having a tenant, where the tenant's position is long-term because the community will always need a tenant. Whereas an owner who can sell it at any time and has a tenant, the tenant may feel they're building it up merely to improve its value. And the last thing is, as you probably know, that it's being offered at 650,000, which is quite a bit more than the Bell Iden, which is probably a better offer, to be honest. And I think you reckoned more than the what did you just say, the Peas Marsh?
Peas Marsh.
I mean, the Horse and Cart is a fine pub, but whatever's wrong with it, it seems to keep being changing hands at the minute. So really, where do we go with this? I mean, I think we're probably, and by the way, he was going to close it during October and he hasn't. So everything is a little bit, probably wait and see.
Yeah, I think the idea from the last meeting was that councillors were quite happy just to wait and see. But because Colin and Paul weren't here,
And especially
it was a case of waiting to see whether they agreed with just waiting to see what people...
Exactly.
Or whether you had strong opinions in the opposite direction, I think was...
I'm not quite sure what direction we're looking at anyhow. I mean, to me there are a couple of things. One, clarification around the ACV which is in place, and typically I thought I understood that once property was put on the market for sale, that triggered the ACV. And that seems to be a bit unclear, in the sense that, is it up to the owner to advise Ashford Borough Council, because the owner is fully conversant with the ACV? Is it up to us to do something about that, or what have you? Because if that is in fact triggered at 6 months, then that also predicates us looking at what the options are. I hadn't heard anything about the rental bit, which is an interesting concept. What you have got, though, is a whole raft of uncertainty running backwards and forwards. You know, 1 minute it's going to buy the Bedford Arms in Rye, and the people who own the Bedford said no, it's not for sale. Then it's going to close on October the 15th, but it didn't. I mean, the ambiguity around which nights it's open, when it is. Drove past there, I can't remember which night it was now, but it shut at 7:05. And so a lot of people in the community are not going to go somewhere on the off chance. It's and this isn't my view necessarily, but a lot of people have mentioned to me individually they don't consider it child friendly or family friendly. You know, they don't want to go there because the conversations can be quite adult, and they didn't feel comfortable. They tried it out. So you know, there's a whole raft of things, but right at the heart of it is, and I think this is sort of summed up in the fact that it's an asset of community value, that it's not recognised by the community because of the way it's currently operated and marketed. I'm not sure there's a great deal we can do unless we decide to say go make him an offer and we rent it for 10 years or 5 years, sufficient to, you know, and that has just sort of occurred to me as we've been talking, because I just didn't know about that. There are communities who don't actually end up buying the freehold of the pub, but end up getting a long lease. But I think a lot of it really does depend on the landlord's true intentions, which I don't think have been particularly clear. So right now, I think the only things that we can do, or maybe should do as a parish council, is one, clarify the ACV if we can do, and secondly, maybe sort of informally, when you next have a chat with him, Jeremy, say this thing about renting it out. Would you rent it out to a community organisation for a sufficiently long period of time? And then, you know, it all comes back, because there's a piece in the latest Outlook on Oxney about it, and I think that the expectation, rightly or wrongly, in the community is that the parish council should show initiative in at least exploring some of the options.
Following that, I have had a response from one resident referring to the piece in the Outlook. He suggests that DAX be encouraged to go there, and that we encourage 2 other business entities to go there to join, to make it into a commercial centre. And the DAX is encouraged to sell the site of his current shop to a person willing to have a small restaurant and tea room. That's a suggestion that I've had.
I would add to that then, a suggestion made to me is that what's currently called George's restaurant
George's
Kitchen.
Kitchen.
would be an ideal venue for a really good curry house, and would probably attract more interest and support and attention from the community. That was someone else's
Well, of
view.
course, the one thing it did in terms of the dining offer was the tie nights, and the tie nights were popular.
Yeah.
But from Kevin's point of view, since he had let the lady have free rein, he wasn't making anything out of them except the drinks. But there were two sides to that. Kevin has always said the village isn't supporting his pub. I have usually said, well, if you're not offering dinners, then what do you expect people to come for? The offer and the expectation never really overlapped very much.
No. And whether it's
And that's
Thai
the
or Indian, there aren't many Indian restaurants that have been successful open one night, possibly a week.
No, well, obviously not.
And we have an example, interestingly enough, in the nearby next community, where a pub's been taken over and now it's open 7 days a week.
Indeed,
That's right.
And doing very, very well.
And that's a pubco, which means it's a much tougher situation because they have to pay pretty serious rent and tie and all the rest of it. Okay.
I would agree with Paul that I think the ABC, we should make representation to ABC on the subject.
Okay.
And possibly engage in a conversation with the present owner.
The difficulty there seems to be that what we've seen is it's not clear whether he's decided himself what he wants to do.
Well, we can have a conversation. We could have a conversation with him prior to applying for an ABC and vice versa. But I think we need some clarity.
No, the ABC we've got. It's ACV.
The
ACV we've got. And before we actually applied for that, Leslie and I went and fronted it up with him and told him we were doing it. And he said he wasn't concerned at all. That's fine. But we did actually go and do that as a courtesy.
Yeah.
Can I just adjourn the meeting briefly for
Oh,
John
beg your
to
pardon,
make a
sorry.
comment because John has a particular
Yeah, having
position
chaired
here,
the
having run the group.
Save the Swan committee, there is a real problem, I think, with the current ownership of the pub for any progress, because I think people are very unlikely to enter a purchase unless he comes down very seriously in pricing. And I do know what it's supposed to be sold for because I commissioned it certainly previously. And I personally feel that people would be uneasy about entering a lease. I mean, I don't wish to be libelous or anything like that, but I just think, I think a lot of us feel he's not the right person, really, and going beyond that, he would be a difficult person to be convinced that in the long term, he would perhaps behave as one might hope as a landlord. And I think, as I say, I don't see any prospect until the ownership changes, which implies a freehold sale, which implies a considerably lower price.
What I did do, John, just since you've raised that, I did talk to the valuer who you used for your group when I was encouraged to do so by the parish council a few months ago to see whether we could get the place valued and how much it would cost. I had a useful conversation with him. He told us that he would do it at the same rate as he does for the trust that you were working with. Not trust, or what are they called?
Plunkett Foundation.
Trust all these food banks, I know.
Plunkett
Foundation. He would be very happy to do it, and but what we did, having found that, then we discussed that again and decided we would take a pause on that. We know we can do it if we need, because obviously that might become quite important under the ACV issue to say, okay, well, yes, it was up for sale. Was it up for sale seriously? Well, not according to our valuation. But who knows where we'll get to.
And the trigger for the ACV, I think, is an offer being made to him, not just the fact that he puts it up for sale.
That would make more sense.
Because that otherwise your 6 months can run out in a very short time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And in any case, the trigger has to be telling Ashford or having a discussion with Ashford, who then offer it to the parish council to see whether they are interested in raising a community bid, and then they have a month to say, and then another 5 months to do it if they want to. So, as you say, something's got to be a bit more than it just appearing on a auction website when you wouldn't even know.
Great.
So, thank you for that. Okay, we'll go back to the parish council meeting then. Well, I think that's about as far as we can go with that. But your point, Colin, accepted. The Village Hall Management Committee representative, when we discussed it before, Paul, which had been 2 months ago, you were going to look at the insurance document that Yvonne, I think, found for you and see if you could get sense out of the underwriters to find out what they thought it covered. I don't think you've done that yet. But
I haven't managed to talk to the underwriters, but I would reiterate the point that I think that whoever goes on the Village Hall Management Committee is representing the parish council, not going on as an individual.
They're not allowed to. They're not allowed to under the charities rules. They have to represent the Village Hall. We can put them on, but then they have to work in the best interests of the Village Hall.
So then it's inappropriate for us to call them the representative then?
Well,
because the understanding has been that they represent us.
You're right.
When Sally's predecessors were doing it, we always got the report back and we always felt they were representing us. So strictly speaking then, that would mean that the Village Hall, all the Village Hall representatives are going on as individuals with no connection to any organisation. And it hasn't quite worked like that.
It isn't quite
so
like that.
Did you manage to speak to the chair? Because you were going to speak to Paul, the chair of the Village Hall, about that. Because I think the suggestion was that they probably and certainly should have their own indemnity insurance.
They have.
In which case, anyone who goes on there is covered.
Subject to the insurance. Yeah, and that's what we're looking at. Is insurance sufficient?
But they wouldn't be held liable for. But we wouldn't be held liable for any decision that they made.
We wouldn't, but that's not what we were worrying about. We were worrying, if we go back to the beginning, if you recall, about Sally's position, if she was to go on.
No different to any other representative.
Yeah, and you raise a good point about should we call them a representative, and the language does get a little bit tangled. We nominate a trustee. Do they represent us? Well, they represent us in the sense that we nominated them. They're perfectly entitled, subject to confidentiality within the hall itself, to tell us what's going on, the same as anybody else can tell people what's going on. It's not a secret society. But they are absolutely not entitled to vote place their votes at the Village Hall Committee on account of what the parish council would like. They have to do it on account of what the Village Hall needs or what they see as in their best interests. So representative, it's certainly not a mandate, that's for sure. Then it's like these political things get into, are they representatives or are they mandated? It's like the TUC conference or something. They represent us in the sense we put them there, but they're not there on our behalf to do our bidding. We can't tell them what to do, and they should make their mind up on the basis of where they are.
Absolutely, and I think it actually sort of indicates that it's up to the Village Hall Committee to get their act together, because actually the whole principle of the Village Hall was to have a series of representatives of the major societies and clubs that used it. It used to be called the Horticultural Society, I think it's now called the Gardening Club, etc., etc. So those organisations get invited by the Village Hall Committee to send a volunteer representative along, but you're quite right, and I guess the grey area is, are they representing the interests of the club or society that they have come from? And I think the implication is the answer would be yes, they would expect, if you're on that, but I think it all comes back for us is that it's them requesting us to see if we can provide a volunteer from the parish council with a clear understanding that they be operating under the rules and regulations of the Village Hall Committee when they're sitting as a committee and as the parish council. So I think we need to be convinced that they fundamentally got their act together and then it's up to us to say whether we respond with a volunteer or volunteers.
When we started this off, Sally was willing to do it. I suggested at an earlier council meeting here that we should in some form say that we stood behind Sally, bearing in mind what we know happened at ACRK.
We can't do that, Jeremy. That's the problem.
That's the point you made. That's the point you made at the time. What you said was we should ensure that position. I went to our insurance brokers, BHIB. I discussed it with someone there who went off and took advice from another person, and they came back and said, no, that is not something that we can cover the council for. It needs to be done in the charity. They gave a little bit of advice which said the charity, one thing you should make sure is that the charity has its policy, with whatever cover it has, in the name of the trustees, not the hall. And we checked that, and that is the case. The next thing then was, well, okay, is the policy of the hall sufficient in terms of safeguarding the trustees in its detail, bearing in mind, for instance, that when a nearby parish council to here had all its money stolen by the clerk, many thousands of pounds, many tens of thousands of pounds, they felt that they had cover from their insurance policy that refused to pay on a reason that was open to argument, but they never got the money from the insurance or the bank, despite it being forged. So it was really saying, is the insurance of the village hall sufficient? And that's why earlier on, Paul, we said that you were more involved in those things than any of the rest of us. You might be able, looking at the policy and talking to either the broker or the underwriter, to find out whether they regard the trustees as held harmless from things going wrong. And that's still the place we are.
Well, I don't think that
that's what we said before.
Yeah, I just don't think I don't think it's up to me to look at another organisation's indemnity policy. Thinking about it now, if it was because we're not, the key thing about any insurance is where's the risk. So there's absolutely no risk, from what you said, to the parish council.
I don't think so.
Right. Well, that's important if you take the ACRK example. So the risk of any of the village hall management committee representatives singly or together going rogue is firmly and squarely with the village hall. So the key question is to them is, have you got a policy that's fit for purpose, whether it's Sally, another, Paul, whoever?
And we don't know.
And we don't know that. But I don't think that we should be going down the road of trying to do their work, to put it bluntly.
I think the other thing that I probably need to say now is when I put my hand up, I think that was my first meeting. I was very naive.
Good, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I'm becoming sort of more and more uncomfortable with actually taking that voluntary post up.
My advice to you would be, for what it's worth, is to put it on hold until the organisation you're considering joining as a volunteer can reassure you that not only are you covered, but all their other members are.
It would certainly be 4 of them.
That would be my
choice would be that the village hall re-registered as a CIO, and without going into too much detail here, there is experience in this room of charities that were not limited liability and have caused a lot of problems for their trustees, which is where all this came from. And also there have been arguments as to whether their parent organisations should stand behind them, but I'm saying I don't think that it's down to us. But the question is, well, what's the difference? If we are nominating you, and we would, if it was you, or whoever it is, if we were nominating you, why are we not standing behind you? And that's why I first said here, that's what we should do. We should say, let us be clear, we are standing behind you. But that's where we went. It's the slippery slope. Paul then said we've got to insure it. The insurers said we can't insure it. I asked them about the sort of policy that the village hall should have, and did they offer them? And our broker said, no, we do not offer a village hall insurance policy. So we can't even tell you, this is our book of words, you know, look at what the other ones say. I mean, unfortunately, this is just like, you know, nailing jelly to the ceiling. Alan?
It's not the dilemma that we have here that I mean, it probably is, but I'm asking a sort of question, is the village hall committee as resolved and robust as it needs to be able to make the right sort of inquiries to achieve what we're suggesting it should have? Because it's quite possible this committee has got that resolve and robustness to be able to give the right sort of advice, where I do wonder whether the village hall committee does. And so I think to dissociate ourselves from it and say it's up to them is rather casting them adrift.
Yeah.
And I'm worried about that because I don't believe that they are sufficiently robust and resolved to be able to get the right answers to the right questions.
It's a fair question, a fair point, Alan. My hope would be, and it will take time, we may just be sitting this out for a while, that when ACRK, who've disappeared, get replaced, and they get a village halls advisor again, that, and I have aired this in a meeting, that their village halls advisor, either here in Kent or perhaps even the national one, there is a national one, does the same work for all the counties, puts in place a template or series of templates that enable them as easily and cheaply as possible to re-register with limited liability as a CIO. Because once it's a limited liability CIO, you're pretty clear. It's like a limited company. If a limited company goes bust, the directors don't have to pay the debts. But at the minute, if the village hall went bust, the trustees do have to pay the debts. And that's the worry. And in some ways, insurance is not... Insurance will never take some of that on unless there's a, you know, an insurable event. And we can go around this endlessly. So I think we'll just move on. The moment you're withdrawing your hand, and I understand that. I understand that. And I've always been, as you will recognise, I've always been anxious about this potential position for you from the start. Okay, we'll sit this one out a little bit longer. Sorry, can I say something?
So decision.
The decision is that we're not nominating anyone to the committee at this point. Because we haven't got, unless someone else wants to volunteer.
Have we asked for a copy of their insurance
Yes,
policy?
it's been.
And you've had it.
That's the latest one from the village hall.
Yeah, that's it. You've had that.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on because we're spending a lot of time. Safe entrance for pedestrians to the War Memorial. We did agree last time that we would set in train a project to open up the entrance between the War Memorial mini garden and the memorial garden behind it, where the other memorials are. As some of you will have seen on Sunday, the steps were very slippery, at least in one place. I managed to avoid completely disgracing myself, but I did go for a little pirouette.
It was a close one. It was a very, very close one.
But also, I was told by Andrew the curate, who was standing there next to it on the grass throughout. He told me afterwards that other people's feet were slipping here and there, and that he said he would vouch for the fact that last year, when I wasn't here, people were slipping.
Mm-hmm.
So, my view, we can't take a decision tonight because it's not formally on the agenda, I think. But my proposal for information at this point would be that I think we've got to widen the project and actually probably repave the surrounds.
I was going to raise it under budget. Is it
We
budget
can certainly
ideas
do
or
it.
something like that?
We can certainly do it there. We can get a decision to do it, but it would be certainly, it's one of the things I've got in the list. So I think we work in the direction, whatever we did to make our new entrance, the piece within the War Memorial Garden would be different slabs anyway. We won't find the same and do the crazy paving. In which case, I think if we can find the white stone, we may as well repave and do the steps and everything. It will make a significant sized project, but I think before, I mean, this is, when we talk about insurance, this is an area where it's our ownership with the occupier, so occupier's liability and all of that. We really don't want someone to fall over and hurt themselves or kill themselves, and then it is held that we actually have not got a safe place. Alan?
Well, I think thinking about your own preservation, and of course, I mean, a year ahead, when you and I and others are laying their reed, I think it might be appropriate that we admit that some non-slip matting is put down to receive wreath layers, because I mean, you Joy, nearly did go. You know, when you would have gone down, you would. You know,
It would have been painful.
It would have been. It would have been serious, Jeremy.
More for me than everyone else. They would have been camping,
It
obviously.
was one of the most dramatic wobbles I've seen for a while.
Well, I'm glad it entertained
It
everybody.
did. It was.
Outside of Dining Street.
Right,
Can
okay.
I
Go
just
on.
say that I've spoken to Alf today about it, and he's going to try and do something within the next few days to try and.
But a non-slip matting next year.
Yes, but it's you know, we're taking time, and something really needs to be done.
Except we're not going to be laying
now.
leaves for another year.
No, but people go up and look at those reeds.
Well, we are, because they've blown everywhere.
Well, they won't. Alf's got. They have
They
their.
might be sensible to go around another way, but you know,
Yeah.
you could put a string across. But
I thought that it ought. We are going to try and do something with it now.
next year we need to bear in mind.
I
It
think
won't have been redone by next year.
I think something should be
No,
done.
quite. It needs to be.
Now.
Say that again.
Should be done now.
Yeah. I think what we can't approve the project until next time. It's not on the agenda. I don't think it can be done under Yvonne's delegation, because that is intended to be for things that are sort of in the line of business, rather
The
than
delegation bit is trying to put something in
Oh, that's
place
fine.
now.
No, that's
so
fine.
Sort it.
That's well, you manage the
Sort it
caretaker
out.
anyway. But I think it's going to have to come back next time to formalise the project. But what we can do is start working on it in the knowledge that, because it's not going to cost any money for now, we'll start working on it in the knowledge that you know about it, and we can't be sure, but hopefully next time, from the sort of immediate thoughts you had, most likely it will be approved. But we'll see when we get to December, and you can take your decisions then. Right. Digital champion. This is Paul Hutchinson, who has agreed with Yvonne that he is going to start offering help to village people on the digital championing agenda in the coffee morning that you do on the second Thursday of the month, so that he can have a desk in here and can help people with their digital problems. That will be it'll be a slow start. I mean, the idea in the longer run, I think, might be that he starts teaching people, he starts getting them digital if they aren't at the minute. But he can start off with answering questions and helping them with particular problems.
Are we going to put something in the parish
So I'm
magazine?
just going to say, so I will put something in the magazine to say that that's happening on the Thursday, and also he's happy for his telephone number to go in there, so that if anybody wants to go direct to him at any other time.
That's very good. Very good.
Sorry, what would he teach me?
If you have a problem logging onto something or downloading something.
Constantly.
He could come round to your house again, Alan.
So that should be his first client.
Yes.
He really means, though, Alan, I think people who are not really yet doing emails or doing
I've overcome that.
Facebook or don't have a machine at all and don't know how to do it. So it's just trying to get the people who are not yet into the digital world.
Well, not only that, no, it is downloading stuff, yeah, anything like that you're not sure on.
Right, ask him. Right, on we go. The planning application to fell the fir tree in the Memorial Garden.
Is it, and it's with Ashford. Comments were requested by the 11th of November, so now it's...
Presumably there will be another one for the village hall tree.
That's the diocese of doing that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Paul has actually, he's gone to his
Well, there's the
committee.
diocese, but there's also the village hall committee. He needs to do the other one.
The diocese are doing...
There's one in the rectory garden, there's one in the...
Diocese will do both and will pay, have said they will pay for both
Right.
felling. They will deal with the whole thing, but they needed permission from, well, they obviously thought it were us, but it's Village Hall. And Paul has emailed the rest of his committee to check that they're happy that it should go ahead.
What trees are these?
It's a plum tree that is causing subsidence in the rectory and a tree in the garden. It's a,
So there are two trees, one in the rectory and one in the village hall.
it's on the boundary. It's a big plum tree apparently that's
I did about the plant.
there. So
Okay.
yes.
Right. Okay, we come to planning applications then. The one behind Lloyd's Green, we have, as I said earlier in the public session, reported our views before. So we will have to do it again, as we were reminded by the previous borough councillor, but we've done a lot of the wording before, and depending of course on what we think now. This is now one house rather than two, but it's a big one. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, 2 of which are en suite, and one's downstairs.
Well, it's too big. It's I would object on the same grounds that we objected last time.
Which one? I wasn't here then.
I'm looking at PA 231281.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sally?
Well, apart from the track, my other issue is the pumping house.
Yeah.
So that land now belongs to the applicant, does it? But the pumping house stands on.
We're not very sure. The pumping station has got rights reserved by Ashford, which were part of the auction documentation. What we don't know at all is what they then put into the actual transfer document of the rest of it.
Right. It doesn't really. It's not really clear how they're going to access that.
No.
It says there's a controlled gate from sort of Lloyd's Green between 16 and 17. But what does a controlled access gate mean?
Or indeed, who's allowed to use it?
We are. And then halfway through the garden, there's a footpath public right of way.
Indeed, strange,
Well,
isn't it? Which goes to their front garden,
Yeah.
so-called.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
My understanding is there's no footpath through there.
No. It's not a PLOW, but
No.
it's honoured in the use, as it were. It's never been applied for. It's honoured in the use for decades and decades. And we're not sure how much. Yvonne's made inquiries with one of the residents as to how much Southern Water use the track and how much they use the Lloyd's Green access. Is this control gate going to be, who's going to be allowed through it? And the people who do presently go through there and across the grass, they haven't got a PLOW right, but as I say, they've certainly got a usage right over decades. Never registered, that's the point. It's all a bit of a mess.
I mean, those are objections we came up with last time too.
Yeah, pretty much. They're pretty much the same.
They're rewriting the same one.
Pretty much the same. Sue?
Yes.
I think our objections are exactly the same as last time.
Colin?
I want to change the objection at all. Very
I,
clear.
I agree. I think the only thing that I'm a bit confused on, to be honest, is what Mr. Carpenter is expected to do. And if he makes good the track, then the new owners of this property don't have to make good the track. It's already done. So it's a bit of a nonsense. But I completely stand behind the objections last time.
Yes.
The whole thing. I mean, if there is a right of way in the sense of decades of usage, because it's not registered, there's nothing to stop a landowner putting up a fence and then fighting it out.
Sure.
But it's a mess. Having a pumping station in the middle of it, that's never going to work in the way. And I think that, to be honest, it seems that the way the whole auction, the whole kind of transfer of ownership contract was drafted was a muddle. I mean, it's like the classic case, isn't it? If you're going to go somewhere, you wouldn't start from there.
No,
That's right.
Sure, all true.
So I would object to it.
It is. We do know that Carpenter has got a wayleaf for agricultural use up the track. It's not. I don't think it's clear whether this one does have a wayleaf up the track. Let's assume maybe he does. is he then able to use the track after Carpenter has paid to tarmac it or do whatever?
Well,
Because
the owner thinks he owns it.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
that's
at
the question, isn't it?
the very least that ABC
Absolutely.
needs to just confirm that the ownership
they have done.
is with them. Well,
Well, they've confirmed with us, yeah.
They've
they
confirmed with us at least.
Yeah,
that
and
they've
I'm
done,
assuming they confirm it.
which we'll point out again.
It's,
The other thing
everything
I-
stands.
The other thing I noticed, can you remember what the distance from the pumping station is supposed to be?
They reduced it.
Yes.
At Ashford from their original
Mm.
reduced it. I think it was 15 to 10.
It's 10 metres. Well, the funny thing here is, if you look at this closely, they've done 10 metres plus in 3 different lines, but none of them are actually the closest.
Close.
They've not gone for the closest one, they've gone for ones that are just far enough apart.
But
Interesting. Okay, well, my views are much the same as everyone else's, so we will have to assemble a
response.
response.
Yeah.
Okay. Next is Mill House. Go around the other way. Paul?
No objection.
Colin?
No comment.
Sue?
No objection.
Adam?
No.
Alan? And me the same. I think that this is a matter for the listings officer.
Yeah.
We haven't had any. The point worth making is that Yvonne's already told us there are no concerns raised by the neighbours. They said they didn't have any problems.
Yeah.
And Miriam actually dealt with that in her paperwork. She said it's really pointing in other directions.
Well, that was my understanding.
Yeah. We're unanimous in our support for that to be able to go ahead. It's just a matter for the listings officer who will no doubt cause various problems. But regrettably, from my point of view, I don't think they should have much to do with it. It's trivial. So we're on your side, Miriam.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll leave you to your goalposts. I've heard what I needed to do.
I thought you were sponsoring.
Well, the goalposts.
Just the one.
You've never seen me play football.
We'll be looking for a member grant. You might let him know.
Yes, give them, send them a message.
I will.
Right, good. Thanks for coming, Mick.
Take care.
Right, request to have a set of goalposts on either the land behind Forge Meads or Coronation Field. Land behind Forge Meads really means the large Ashford space. We have had goalposts on both of them before they were vandalised, regrettably. Inevitably, my hope would be, but obviously we've been waiting long enough already. My hope would be that we had got the village green handed over and we could have done something there. Incidentally, if we did get the village green, I didn't mention this before, one of my aims would be to improve the smoothness of it, because it's pretty rough at the minute, and it ought to be possible to get it to I mean, you wouldn't, it doesn't have to be like Wembley, but on the other hand, if you're going to play football, it would be better if it wasn't quite such a trip hazard. But what do people think about this? It's regrettable that they may get vandalised again. We'd like not to think not, but...
Could I just ask, is the person who's asking for it, are they asking the parish council to put them on there, or are they asking permission to put them on themselves? Does that make sense?
Yes, it came through as, could the parish council
do it?
And Alfie's happy, because what he did before was just some wood and made
a
goalpost, and he's happy to do that again. And I can see it, can't see it.
I was just thinking who was going to look after them.
Exactly. Well,
if the parish council,
yes,
parish council, yeah.
And if it's vandalised again, then
It shall be it. At the moment.
Sorry.
Go on, sorry.
Does the person who requested them live in the area?
yes, Forge Meads.
Okay.
Yes.
That's why I suggested that Forge Meads would be
Yeah.
a better area,
I think
because
that's
otherwise
I
the
mean,
kids have got to cross the main road.
This is for children,
Yes.
basically, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
not. And so, I mean, I know when you
It's
go
not
through
football pitch.
no, when you go through Rolvenden Lane on the left-hand side,
Right,
there, they've
yes.
got those little
Yeah.
goalposts
Yeah.
and what have you, which are sort of ones I think they've got little wheels on them or what have you. And so maybe the thing to do is
Yes.
is could we find a way of making the residents responsible for protecting the goalposts? You know, can we go back to them and say, could you put forward, I don't want to use the word goalpost representative of Forge Meads, but in the sense that if you give the community the responsibility, there might be adults who will say, yeah, we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll discourage vandalism by, because it's likely that the vandalism will come from, let's say, people in the area.
The ones who are not
rather
using
than-
them.
Hmm?
The ones who are not using them.
Well, but I'm just thinking about putting the ownership, the responsibility, the community piece around it.
The ones are very effective in Walpole Lane, but they're not full size, and they don't need to be.
No, they don't need to be. Yeah.
I get the impression it was, I mean, going back to my day when the kids used to put jumpers or jackets in place to use them as goalposts.
Yes, it's when they leave them and the parents have a go. But you know, the ones at Walpole Lane are very effective, I think.
Yeah.
You know,
If they're small children, they need smaller goalposts,
Yes.
presumably, because they can't do the goalie job in a
yeah,
full size
it's-
one because they won't be able to reach.
Yeah. I think those having the children's size instead of full size would you know, just slightly above the 5-a-side football size would be fine. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
You know.
I'd go back to the people requesting it and say, okay, in principle it sounds like a good idea, but what exactly do you want? You're not quite full. If they're for children, are you wanting sort of, I don't know what the phraseology is, junior size or children's size?
I would say.
And would somebody be prepared in the community to keep an eye on it, or what have you, and just kind of just sort of say, come on guys, let's have a little bit of community ownership.
Yeah.
I think in principle it's a great idea. And it doesn't necessarily need to be, but I would agree with you to start with Forge Meads as the sort of first location, but not necessarily ultimately limited.
The only other thing is that we've got a choice as to whether we just do it and ignore the fact that it's Ashford's land, or we ask Ashford, who then may have a load of fuss about who's going to be this, that, and the other.
It may well be by putting the goalposts in, you may get a response from Ashford Borough Council.
To tell us we shouldn't do it. And we say,
Actually, maybe actually your earlier comment about getting a contribution from a member grant would be a step in the right direction in terms of Ashford ownership, because if they're partly funding it, ergo.
What I do know, by the way, is member grants have been reduced. They're not as big as this.
Yes, it does.
Well, then we'll reduce the size of the goalpost.
Okay,
well, we are considering that anyway.
We'll try and do something
Yes.
in the land around Forge Meads. I mean, if there's a bit that's smooth enough, are we thinking of one or two, by the way? Just one for one kid to kick and one to save?
I would suggest we have two.
Two, okay.
Yes, I mean they've got two in Rolvin Lane.
Yes, and they're movable very easily.
Yeah.
So movable. So do I look?
Yes,
into
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they're small enough, unless most of the kids will not swing on it. We hope.
Okay, and they can either go on the village green if it is sufficient.
And if it can be
it's not
movable,
smooth
we
enough,
have the
if it's
village
no
green.
rougher, it's got to be a reasonably smooth piece of land to make
I think
sense.
the piece the other side between Woodland View and the play areas probably.
Okay.
Some would suggest that the more rough the ground is, potential professionals will be quite happy to use it to get the support.
I see. One of the cloth, you mean?
Yes, yeah.
Or the
Controls
straw
are
in this
important
case.
thing.
Okay.
So you agreed
Fair
to
enough.
one and
So we have two.
agreed movable ones.
Yeah. So I should probably try them.
Right,
Well, I was thinking that.
next one is a letter to the sports club to be considered expressing concern over the apparent lack of progress with securing a lease on the sports ground for the future. I spoke to the land agent today. I did succeed in getting through to him. Spoke to him today. He is endeavouring to make progress. It is pretty much finalised, but there is some discussion still needed between himself, the landlord and the lawyer. There is a lawyer on the case again after the other one went, and they are trying to get the lawyer and the landlord and the land agent together to do that meeting, which he suggested should be enough if they can pull that all together.
But that's been the situation for about the last 3 years.
I can't answer that, Alan. Not 3 years, but I can't answer that.
Yeah,
He
we
said
will
that-
share your frustration.
He said that it is, they do need a discussion, it is some final points that they need to do.
Yes.
Well,
I mean,
that
that is-
will
yeah.
give them at least to put to the sports club.
I had a discussion with Willie, as you probably remember, in the spring, in April, and I got exactly the same answer then.
Sure, I know.
Well, in 470 odd days,
there
it
are-
ceases to be an issue.
Indeed, there are things that
That's the end of the lease.
there are things that have been holding it
Talk.
up. They're not for discussion here, but he knows that we're on it. And now the question is, or the exact point here on the agenda is whether we write to the sports club. The sports club has already written to Willie just lately saying, come on, we really do need to make progress on this. And in a way, therefore, which you know about. So,
Well, only that I think the sports club, from what I understand, will be quite happy for us to send them a letter. They
Okay.
will reply that we're getting on to it, but it might jig things along if they know.
okay.
that
I
the
think
parish
I would
council-
propose that we write to the sports club and we CC the land agent.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Well, I told him it was on the agenda tonight.
I would totally support
Okay,
that.
so we do that then. Yvonne can put something
With
on
our original letter.
Okay,
Yep.
good. Right. Consider projects for inclusion in next year's budget, which will start in May. Let me spin through the ones I've got here, and then anyone else can say, no, we don't want that in, or indeed, at the end, yes, what about extras? Okay? So, in no particular order, 40 mile an hour speed limit at Peening Quarter.
Pinion corner.
The grass area at the street that we want to do
Yeah.
when we're allowed. Access to the War Memorial and replacing the paving around the War Memorial. Bus shelter. The website upgrade. And last but not least, cemetery extension, which is the big one. Post approval for change of use.
I'd certainly support and agree with all of those.
Yes, I would not object to any of those points.
Does anyone have extras that I haven't thought of? That was my top of the head list. Sally?
I think you've covered them pretty well.
I mean, one has to ask at this moment because it came up. And again, it's difficult for us in this part of the room to understand how the cemetery is taking 5 years, 10 years to extend. Do you see what I mean? It is,
No, I know.
I mean, it's such a long time ago that we last discussed it, and I've forgotten why. But there presumably is a reason that I've failed to firmly assimilate.
It's resting on putting in a renewed application for change of use after Ashford raised problems with the last one before COVID, and not wanting to get into the position, but it's difficult to know how best to deal with it, not wanting to get into the position where they actually turn it down for not what I don't think is good reasons, whereupon we'd then want to appeal it.
Jeremy,
it's
quick question
it's
on the
it's all about trees.
Yes.
On the finances, how much have we spent so far, and what's the amount we need to spend should we get permission to complete the project?
Well, the original, we haven't spent a lot yet. The original outline wet finger for the project was 30,000, which we can afford. That's a while ago. What has to be done is providing the access through the existing cemetery to the tree line. Obviously making a gap in the fence there. Then fencing with a stock-proof fence the land that we were given.
Yeah.
Planting hedging along the two sides of the stock-proof hedge in the usual way, which will eventually become trees, the same as the ones we have, or some of them will. And hardening the access down the side of the trees which is what upset Ashford last time.
Yeah.
And this is the nuance that they said, oh, you might damage the trees if you have vehicles going up and down there, rather oblivious to the fact that there has been vehicles going up and down there. And incidentally, if the trees did get damaged, any of them, and I think they've put up with far worse with the graves the other side, then it'd be replaced.
Did that
they're all just hedge plants.
Did that come from an officer or from the full committee?
Tree officer. No,
came from an officer. The officer will undoubtedly have changed from 5 years ago. I think that if the project 5 years ago was 30k, I should think, without wishing to think of HS2, it'll be at least 50 now. And we've spent.
We never knew it was 30. It was
I thought you said. Well, I thought you said. Well, because we did have a discussion at the time. Yeah. And because I objected to it, I do remember that. I thought it was a huge amount of money. But anyhow, in a democratic vote, we voted by a majority to go ahead.
And then isn't the land being donated by?
We've got the land. The land is ours.
Yes,
the whole cost of all the earthworks,
it's not really 50,000.
Well, it was 5 years ago. We estimated it at 30k, and I just think it will have gone up by then. All the things that Jeremy has listed there, you know, we've got to. We're struggling to find a bus shelter under 10,000, right? I mean, the facts of life is that all of these people involved in this are in high demand, and their costs have gone up and their fees have gone up. But my question is, how much have we spent so far on the cemetery extension project? Because we have spent something.
We spent some money with Dave Ward, who did some land. He did some de-rooting, ploughing and harrowing at the time, and rolling at the time.
Yeah.
So that the land that we've got ready for the cemetery extension is relatively flat rather than orchard standard.
Yeah.
And that's what I was talking about earlier about the village green. If we did take over the village green, I would expect to do something similar, so that it was kind of flattish.
My only other thought is that it's fencing and gates and hedging, and it's a bit of a punt, but whether it would qualify under the countryside stewardship programme.
Why not? I know a land agent who knows about things.
Well, I know somebody who is extremely good value, and I know somebody else who is extremely capable. Is it just worth me asking there if this could potentially qualify? It might be that you have to have, a sheep or two on it or something, I don't know, but it might not. But I mean, it's basically fencing, hedging, gatage, all of which is what the countryside stewardship programme does.
There is a possibility that we can get something, I think, towards the hedge at least, because there's.
So with your permission, I might just make a few inquiries whether we could come into that, because there are really quite considerable grants available.
Feel free.
And don't worry about the sheep. They've been doing it at Warehorn for years and years and years.
Yes.
So there's a precedent.
And I mean, in that situation, I'm not an expert at doing the claims or anything like that, but I do know somebody who is. And I might just take it forward.
Well, feel free.
Feel free.
I think it is something that needs to be moved forward again now, as things move on in other respects.
It's filling up.
Okay, anything else to add to that list? Otherwise, let's move on.
No.
Okay, good.
So are we going to inquire if Alan could take it forward?
Oh yeah, I said yeah. Sorry, if
yeah.
I'm going to. You're fortunate. I was talking to him this afternoon, so I've got this meeting and that meeting in the wrong order. But I will go back to him.
Okay,
can I make a suggestion on this? Something we discussed before COVID, and I think is it David Green, the former councillor?
Yes.
He put forward the suggestion of
the white gates.
The white gates.
Yeah.
The
white gates. Yes, he did.
And that's on our highways improvement plan.
Is it?
Yes. So it's within.
Well, is it within the?
I haven't listed it here.
Yeah, so okay, if it's on the list, that's fine.
It's one of those things.
It's on the list, isn't it?
Is it on the list? Okay.
And we're waiting. They're okay that end, and it's the Stocks Road, whether something comes up that the developer will pay for it.
Right.
That end.
Yeah.
And the other end's waiting on the speed.
We could just put the new one in anyhow.
That's where it would probably go.
Okay, that's great.
We
Thank
have
you.
to agree where it
Thank
goes.
you.
Oh, yes, that is already.
Thank you.
Okay. The correspondence then, the Poppy appeal, straightforward. Yes.
Yes, just receipts and thank you.
Okay. We've been asked about the Celt Community Award, which we can discuss in camera. The working party reports then, caretaker.
Only that Alf will be starting sort of the winter work soon, putting back stuff.
Okay. Good. The monthly statements we've had from Yvonne today.
Even yesterday.
Even yesterday. Oh, sorry, I was looking at them today, that's what I'm thinking of. Right, okay. Does anyone have any questions on that? The key things you'll see in the main one that's got everything in it is that Yvonne paid money to KCC for their demand to be paid to do the traffic regulation order for the speed limit. And we had to pay money for a new turbocharger and service for the van. Well,
Yep.
turbocharger and the service got done at the same time. Colin and I discussed that at the time.
Yeah.
And other than that, I think it's all pretty much, well, the audit fee, of course, is just once a year. So can I sign them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Jeremy,
Okay.
can I ask where we are in terms of depositing our funds with the CCLA?
The main lump has been done.
It's
Okay.
on your bottom left-hand side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in there.
And then we've
Oh, I see.
also,
Okay,
we've also
yeah.
now got
Okay.
we've got the deposit account with Unity Trust Bank, which means that Yvonne can, with councillors obviously having to make the authorised transactions, she can move money in there as well from the current account, which is on more easier access. But she's just got to work out how much to do that. She hasn't done it yet, but it's available. The account's open, ready to move some there. So financially we're fine.
And I've had confirmation that I'm a signatory from the
Yes,
Unity
I had
Bank.
one. I had one as well. Good. Planning. So you supported under delegation the fence at the old stables.
Yes, and it's been agreed.
It has been agreed. has it?
Yes.
Right,
Yeah, it
okay.
was agreed on the 7th.
Okay. Open spaces. Anything to say?
Excuse me, open spaces.
Yes, I don't think news report, and Leslie hasn't passed anything on to me.
Okay. PLOWs?
Right, the footpath that goes alongside Church Wood, where I had asked Tim Piper if he would got some branches that were down, that were too thick for me to do anything with. So I asked if he'd be able to. He couldn't at the time because his contractors were planting, but I've just had an email today to say that he's had a contractor down there and they've cleared the branches. So should be able to get through there now. Of course, the only problem is that we can't get up the other side of it. But
good.
And all of the paths are going to be horrible now that we've had all the rain. Did you want to bring up at that point?
Yes. I was asking Yvonne earlier, I mean, I don't know there's much anything else can do about this, but I realised after I read the minutes again today that I hadn't raised a question last time on one of the PROWs, which I find a bit irritating, which is KCC. Last time Yvonne reported AT245 steps up towards the back of Lloyd's Green. As this path is not on the correct alignment, no work can be undertaken. And I just asked Yvonne the killer question today, is the correct alignment passable? And she said, no, it's not, and it never will be, because it would be a massive job to make it passable.
It'd be like walking over a cliff.
So basically, as I pointed out to her, they're trying to have it both ways. They're saying, well, the correct alignment can't be done because it's too big a job, and we're not willing to put through an order to move it to the one that can be corrected.
Yeah.
And without putting an order through, they're not willing to sort it out, which is the way people actually walk, because it's not the right place. I mean, it's catch-22 3 times over. And she said, well, you know, all they'll do is just put it on the list. Nothing will be done. But it is another case of, I'm afraid, it's another case of KCC just throwing their hands up and saying, oh, we can't do our job because it's all too difficult. End of, really. Okay, that's PROWs for you. At least it's not school transport. Right. Highways. Sorry,
public rights
please
of way.
do.
Yes,
Oh,
that is-
sorry.
Where are we at with the dog waste bin on Swan Street?
Nothing yet.
We were going to write to the house
Yes.
owners.
I haven't. Thank you, so.
Okay. Okay, highways, you're going to try and get hold of the highway warden to talk about
Cooper's Corner, no, I haven't got anything back from him on that, on the sight line. And up at the stocks where he promised to replace one of the entry signs and to another, and add another one to it, and to re-white line the no entry bit. There's one new sign, but that's all. So I'm going to ask him what's happened to the others. So I've got 2 issues there.
Okay.
Jeremy, can I raise a point on highways? This might well be asking for the clerk's advice. So several people have mentioned to me who live in the village that once you get over, I don't know what it's called, but the bridge, Eccles Turf Bridge, where Pee Wee lives, the road then from there up into Iden is an utter nightmare.
It's a disaster.
It's a disaster. I drove down to Rye, yesterday, and I thought the wheels are going to come off, or at least going to puncture.
Well, it's coming back. It's worse.
And the question that's asked is what, not what we, the parish council, but if it happened in our parish in Kent, we know what to do. What happens to people who travel that road that want to make a...
Same thing, we've gone to East Sussex.
It's East Sussex,
yes.
Is it? Okay, right. From your experience, is there any involvement with the Iden Parish Clerk? Have they got a track record of interest in that or
I don't
anything?
know, could ask.
Would you mind having a sort of quiet word? Because sometimes that can be quite effective.
Yeah. I mean, that road is just awful.
It's awful.
It is.
I mean, it's the sort of road that really needs to be closed completely, and then we'd have to get around our way.
Yes.
Well, you go down to get the boat, and then
Get the boat.
as we've done in the past.
But yes, it is.
It's all very recreational, that sort of thing.
You could open a pub, it could be the Potman's Heath ferry.
Well, the Barge Cottage, as you know, was a beer hall until
Yes.
relatively recently.
I might have known.
Very disappointing it isn't still.
Well, it's back on the market. So,
Yeah, right.
community purchase?
Recently back, it actually
Okay.
sell. It went off the market. It's back on.
Yeah.
Right, so Yvonne will ask Mary if there's any...
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cemetery churchyard. Sue?
No, I don't think there's anything particular. Anything.
Apart from what we've already covered.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay. We've got the date of the next meeting, which is the December one, so there will be refreshments. Are we still going to start at 7 like we start at 7 anyway now, or are we going to move it to 6:30? Because it used to be 7 when we normally started at 7:30.
Well, if I put start, arrive beforehand sort of thing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
6:45.
Oh, so the parish meeting, of course, is at 7, yes. You're right.
Breakfast.
Okay.
And our PC does seem to be keen. When I mentioned sausage rolls and mince pies, he said, you got me the sausage rolls. So hopefully...
Until he gets scheduled somewhere else.
All 6 dozen.
Really?
Right, okay. Items for information, the climate change meeting on the 4th of November that I went to with Leslie, this is at Greg and Kate's. Leslie was there as well. Dave and Fiona were there from the Willows. I think that was it, and me. We were really talking about things to do with how to move towards net zero, insulation and draft proofing and things like that. Sam Collins has offered to them to try and set up a new website for them on climate change type things. I think this is all very encouraging that there's initiative within the community to try and move things along there. I've had a discussion with the Black House down towards you, the new one of Carol and David Thorne, because they've got ground source heat pump. So I had a discussion with him about that. Theirs is the horizontal one, ground source, but the pipe goes underground with what they like to call a slinky. The hose pipe sort of does that and comes back about 100 metres each way or something. I've also got the number of, I haven't spoken to him yet, I've got the number of the owner of the company who is doing the one at John Rivers' old house. He owns the company and he has bought the house, which I think is why he's been able to spend so much on the ground source heat pump, which he drilled. And astonishingly, there are 4 holes and they are all 200 metres deep. Because it's 660 feet.
Did he meet anybody down there?
Australia.
It's not a cover for fracking, is it?
It might be.
I wondered how. I wonder what. There's some really expensive kit there.
Oh yeah, that's his business. He does, and he's not.
He's not 200 metres. That's all.
Yeah, he's not drilling.
A long way.
He's not drilling holes for geotech, which is what they often do. He is specifically a ground source heat pump. So, but I've got his number, but I haven't rung him yet to ask him about it because Greg's interested in coming along and talking to his meeting. If anyone's interested in air source heat pumps, which of course are the thing that the government is pressing, I didn't know this until Greg told me, and I am with Octopus, as some other people might. Octopus is now offering air source heat pumps, and they're claiming to be cheaper than everybody else.
Yes, that's what
and I put
gathered.
my house in, admittedly without any details, and it's a 4-bedroom bungalow and whatever, and it came back cost of about 3,000 quid after grant. In other words, much cheaper than anybody else. Now it may be that then when they survey it, they say, but on the face of it, according to Greg, there's nothing. I haven't read all their stuff on the website. It's one of these things where you have to go and click all over the place to read all the stuff.
I've got a funny feeling they might turn me down.
Theirs runs much hotter. It runs, according to Greg, at 70 degrees, whereas most run at 50, and that makes it apparently more efficient if they can, or better for, well, not necessarily more efficient, better for making it work effectively to keep the house warm. Greg has got an air source heat pump in his house in London that he put in lately. It takes about a quarter of the kilowatt hours that he used to use of gas. But the trouble is that the electricity then costs 4 times as much as the gas. So it comes out about the same. But he says it's very toasty.
We're still waiting for gas, aren't we?
And that's about it really. We did briefly talk about use of solar power in conservation areas and on listed buildings, which is an issue the government have talked about a little bit. I've talked about it to Ashford, but I don't think anyone's grasped that yet. So that's that one, the 4th of November meeting. The next one, the full meeting, is on the 25th of November in here, which I shall aim to be attending.
You've got a little time for that.
Have I got time?
Is there time for the meeting?
I'll see what I've got here. I've got it at 11 a.m.
Thanks.
Assuming that I didn't put that in when it was in France, in which case it puts an hour out. I think it probably is 11 though. We've already heard that the PC hopes to come here to our December meeting. And then the last item is to resolve by the
Unless
nature.
anyone's got,
oh, sorry.
unless anyone else has got
Any other information, yes?
No.
Anything else?
Nothing.
to raise?
Nothing.
So we need to resolve by the nature of the sensitivity of the next item to exclude the public, which is to consider Yvonne's pay rise, which in keeping with all these public sector things, it was due on April the 1st and they've just agreed it with the union. Are we resolving that?
Yes.
Can someone Sue and Aaron, you want in favour?
Yes.
So we've resolved that.